The pre-dawn air at the old mill house was a raw, unforgiving whip against Seraphina Cross's sweat-drenched skin. A thin, milky fog clung to the ancient hemlocks that crowded the property, their skeletal branches reaching like grasping claws into the inky sky. The only sounds for miles were the relentless churn of the old concrete mixer, a grating, mechanical growl that seemed to rip through the very fabric of the forest's silence, and Seraphina's own ragged, desperate gasps. Her hands, scraped and raw, trembled violently as she wrestled with the heavy machine, her reflection in a puddle of murky water showing a face ghost white with terror, eyes wide and bloodshot, pupils dilated with an unholy mix of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated fear. A shallow, crudely dug pit lay before her, smelling of damp earth and something far more sickening, a faint, metallic tang that made her gorge rise. With a guttural grunt, she heaved, pushing a shapeless, impossibly heavy bundle wrapped in a tattered tarp towards the edge of the pit. Each movement was agony, her muscles screaming, but a colder, more primal scream echoed inside her skull, demanding she finish. The bundle slid with a sickening thud, settling at the bottom. She didn't dare look too closely, didn't dare let her gaze linger on the faint outline beneath the canvas. But the image was already burned into her retina, a horrifying tableau that would haunt her until her last breath. Then came the concrete, thick, gray, and unforgiving. It poured from the mixer with a relentless gush, hissing as it met the damp earth. Seraphina watched, mesmerized by the slow, suffocating flow, a morbid fascination warring with the overwhelming urge to vomit. Asterisk. This is it, asterisk, a voice whispered, cold and distant in her mind. Asterisk. No going back now. Asterisk. The smell of wet cement mingled with the faint, persistent scent of blood, a macabre perfume that choked her. When the pit was filled, a flat, gray slab obscuring the horror beneath, she began to shovel, bag after bag of rich, dark potting soil, then a thick layer of topsoil, carefully raked, almost lovingly smooth. She even scattered a handful of fallen leaves, mimicking the natural debris of the forest floor. Asterisk. Make it look like nothing ever happened. Make it look like a garden bed. Asterisk. The absurdity of the thought made a hysterical bubble rise in her throat, quickly choked back. Her chest heaved, each breath a struggle. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat, but underneath it, a terrifyingly clear resolve had solidified. Asterisk. Survival. Asterisk. That was all that mattered now. She remembered Eleanor's voice, vibrant and insistent on the phone just hours ago, demanding the money. The casual ease with which Eleanor had spoken, unaware of the abyss Seraphina was teetering on, had ignited a spark of resentment, quickly extinguished by the inferno of fear. Asterisk. $40,000. Seraphina. I need it by Monday. For Leo. Asterisk. The words echoed, no longer a plea, but an accusation. How had it spiraled so wildly out of control? She closed her eyes, trying to block out the image of the fresh earth, the faint, lingering scent of iron. It wasn't supposed to be like this. None of it. Just a few years ago, the bond between Eleanor Vance and Seraphina Cross had been as solid and unyielding as any bedrock. They had met in college, two ambitious young women with vastly different dreams, but a shared hunger for life. Eleanor, with her sharp wit and unwavering sense of justice, had been destined for the police academy, a path Seraphina, with her artistic flair and entrepreneurial spirit, had always admired from afar. Seraphina had launched Seraphina's Chic Corner, a boutique that became a local darling, full of unique, handcrafted jewelry and clothing, reflecting her vibrant personality. They had celebrated each other's triumphs, commiserated over heartbreaks, and shared countless late-night talks over cheap wine, weaving a tapestry of trust and shared history. Eleanor had been there when Seraphina secured the loan for her first store, and Seraphina had been a pillar of support when Eleanor navigated the tumultuous waters of her divorce. Eleanor Vance, a former police officer whose steely gaze belied a deep well of compassion, was now a single mother, fiercely devoted to her 7-year-old son, Leo. Her life revolved around him, a constant, beautiful whirlwind of school plays, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. The bitter, drawn-out custody battle with her ex-husband was a dark cloud that threatened to engulf them. But Eleanor, a fighter by nature, was determined. Every fiber of her being was dedicated to ensuring Leo's stability and happiness. A recent settlement of $40,000 from an old injury case was her beacon of hope, a financial shield against her ex-husband's relentless legal maneuvers. To protect this vital sum from being declared a contested asset in the upcoming court hearing, Eleanor had done the only thing that felt right, the only thing that felt safe. She had entrusted it to Serafina. Just hold on to it for a few months, Sarah, she had said, her voice full of weary optimism. Once this custody nonsense is over, I'll take it back. It's for Leo's future. There had been no hesitation, no doubt in Eleanor's heart. Serafina was family, the sister she chose. Serafina, on the surface, was the picture of success. Her boutique, while small, projected an image of effortless style and prosperity. Yet, beneath the meticulously arranged window displays and the curated racks of designer clothes, a different story was unfolding. The truth was a tangled mess of poor investments, dwindling sales, and ballooning debt. The economy had shifted, online competition had soared, and her initial success had slowly, insidiously eroded. The quiet panic had started months ago, a cold knot in her stomach that tightened with every overdue bill. She had begun to borrow from customer deposits, small sums at first, always rationalizing that she would pay them back once her next big order came in. But the big orders never quite materialized, and the hole grew deeper. Then, Eleanor had handed her the check for $40,000. It had been like a siren song, a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Asterisk, just for a little while. Asterisk, Shed told herself, her heart hammering. Asterisk, a temporary loan. I'll invest it, turn a profit, and return it with interest. Eleanor won't even know. Asterisk. The rationalization had been a flimsy veil over a desperate act, but in her panic state, it had felt like the only way out. She had used the money to pay off her most pressing creditors, to keep the store afloat, to maintain the illusion. Each transaction had been a step further down a treacherous path, each solved problem replaced by a deeper, more insidious fear of discovery. The money was gone, vanished like smoke, absorbed into the gaping maw of her failing business. The anxiety had become a constant companion, gnawing at her, consuming her, turning her once vibrant spirit into a brittle, desperate thing. The call had come late Tuesday evening, a bright, hopeful chime cutting through Serafina's carefully constructed delusion. Eleanor's voice, clear and strong, filled her ear, vibrating with an excitement Serafina hadn't heard in months. Sarah, guess what? My lawyer just called. The big custody hearing is set for next week. I actually have a good feeling about this one. We've got solid evidence this time. Eleanor paused, a joyful sigh escaping her lips. And that means I need the 40,000. By Monday, ideally. I want it in my account, ready for whatever legal fees pop up, just in case. Serafina's world tilted. The phone felt like a block of ice against her ear. Her heart, already a jittery drum in her chest, began to pound, a frantic, irregular rhythm. Asterisk, Monday, 40,000. Now, asterisk. The blood drained from her face, leaving her lightheaded. Oh, she managed, her voice a reedy whisper. Eleanor, that's wonderful news. About the hearing, I mean. She tried to buy time, her mind racing, scrambling for an excuse. Any excuse. But Monday? That's awfully soon. I mean, the money, it's in a special account. A bit tucked away. Tucked away where? Eleanor asked, her tone still cheerful, but with a slight edge of curiosity now. I figured you just had it in a savings account or something, easy to transfer. Well, no, Serafina lied, the words tasting like ash. I moved it, for safekeeping. It's at the old mill house. You know, that old safe my grandfather built into the wall. It's got all your documents, too. The ones you gave me. The old mill house, her family's secluded, dilapidated cabin deep in the woods, a place where no one ever went. Perfect. It would be easier if you just came out here. We could sort through everything, sign some papers, you know, make it all official. A plan, crude and desperate, began to form in her panicked mind. Asterisk. Buy time. Just buy time. Asterisk. Eleanor hesitated. The mill house? That's a bit of a trek, Sarah. Can't you just bring it into town? No, really, Serafina insisted, her voice tight with fabricated sincerity. It's all mixed up with some of my own old papers. And the bank is closed now, anyway. It's getting late. Why don't you come out tomorrow night? We can make a whole evening of it, like the old days. Catch up. The suggestion was laced with a false warmth that even to Serafina's ears sounded brittle. Eleanor sighed, a sound of reluctant acceptance. All right, Sarah. Tomorrow evening it is. I'll drive out after Leo's asleep. Around 8, just you and me. And make sure that money is ready. I really, really need this. The hope in Eleanor's voice was a sharp knife twisting in Serafina's gut. It'll be here, Serafina promised, the lie catching in her throat. Everything will be here. She hung up, her hands shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. She had to act. She had to. The first step, the tranquilizer she kept in the medicine cabinet for her chronic insomnia. A few crushed pills in Eleanor's favorite herbal tea. Eleanor would drift off, deep in a drug-induced sleep. Then what? A staged fall down the old creaky stairs? A disappearance where she simply vanished into the night, giving Serafina time to flee, to somehow cobble the money together? The plan was vague, terrifying, but it was a plan. Anything was better than the exposure, the shame, the utter ruin that awaited her if the truth came out. The next evening, the old mill house was cloaked in an unnatural silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the whisper of the wind through the pines. Serafina paced the worn floorboards, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She had brewed a pot of chamomile tea, the tranquilizers already dissolved in one of the mugs. The bitter tang was masked by honey and lemon, she hoped. When Eleanor's headlights finally cut through the darkness, Serafina felt a jolt of both dread and a twisted kind of relief. The moment of reckoning was here. Eleanor, vibrant even in her exhaustion, greeted Serafina with a warm hug that felt like a physical accusation to Serafina. Thanks for doing this, Sarah. I really appreciate it. So, where's this treasure chest you've got my money locked away in? She gestured to the dusty living room, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Serafina forced a smile, her throat tight. Come in, come in. Let's get you some tea. It's been a long drive. She led Eleanor to the small, rustic kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she poured the tea. She watched Eleanor closely, her stomach churning, as her friend took a sip. So, Eleanor began, setting down her mug, a serious note entering her voice. About the money. Is it all there? 40,000, right? She leaned forward, her intense gaze fixed on Serafina. Serafina hesitated, the carefully constructed facade crumbling under Eleanor's directness. She fumbled for words. Well, Eleanor, about that. I had a little bit of an emergency, a business crisis. I had to use some of it, temporarily, of course. I was going to pay it back, I swear. The words tumbled out, a pathetic confession. Eleanor's eyes, which had been warm and trusting moments before, hardened. You used my money? Serafina, what are you talking about? That money was for Leo. It was for court. You know how crucial it is. Her voice rose, laced with disbelief and then a growing anger. How much, Serafina? How much did you temporarily use? Serafina cringed. All of it, Eleanor. It's gone. But I have a plan. I can get it back. Just give me a little more time. A few weeks, maybe. Eleanor stood up abruptly, knocking her chair slightly. The tea mug still sat on the table. Her gaze flickered to the untouched tea, then back to Serafina's pale, guilt-ridden face. The subtle tremor in Serafina's hands, the evasive eyes, the rapid-fire excuses. It all clicked into place with chilling clarity. The years of police training, the instinct for deception, surged through Eleanor. "You lying bitch," Eleanor spat, the words cutting through the tense air like broken glass. "You took my son's money. You stole it. And you brought me out here, to this godforsaken place, under false pretenses? What is this, Seraphina? What exactly did you plan to do once I drank your special tea?" Her voice was low, dangerous, an echo of the authority she once commanded. Seraphina's heart leaped into her throat. Eleanor had seen through it. The game was up. Panic, raw and unadulterated, seized her. "No, no, Eleanor, wait. It's not like that. I can explain." She lunged for the mug, her hand reaching for Eleanor's, intending to force the drink, to make her take it. But Eleanor, with the lightning reflexes of a former officer, sidestepped her. She grabbed Seraphina's wrist, twisting it sharply. "Get your hands off me!" Eleanor's eyes blazed with fury and betrayal. "You embezzled my money, and now you're trying to drug me? What kind of monster are you, Seraphina?" The mug clattered to the floor, spilling its contents in a dark, ominous stain. The air crackled with tension. Seraphina's carefully constructed world had imploded. The fear of exposure, the crushing weight of her deceit, the certainty of ruin, converged into a single, overwhelming thought. Asterisk. She can't tell anyone. Asterisk. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, landing on the antique hunting rifle mounted above the fireplace. It was an old family heirloom, dusty and rarely used, but its presence was suddenly terrifyingly potent. In a blur of sheer animalistic terror, fueled by desperation and a twisted sense of self-preservation, Seraphina wrenched her arm free. She stumbled back, snatching the rifle from its hooks. The cold metal felt shockingly heavy in her trembling hands. "Stay back, Eleanor," she shrieked, her voice high-pitched and unhinged. "Don't come any closer. I swear to God." Eleanor froze, her anger momentarily replaced by a cold dread. She saw the madness in Seraphina's eyes, the desperate, cornered, animal look. "Seraphina, put the gun down," Eleanor commanded, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. "Don't do this. Think about Leo. Think about what this means." But Seraphina was past thinking, past reasoning. Her finger, numb and disobedient, found the trigger. The world narrowed to a tunnel, Eleanor's face at the end of it, a mask of horror and disbelief. A deafening roar tore through the quiet cabin, shattering the night's fragile peace. The recoil slammed into Seraphina's shoulder. Eleanor gasped, a choked, guttural sound, her hands flying to her chest, her eyes, wide and disbelieving, locked with Seraphina's for one agonizing moment before she crumpled to the floor, a dark, spreading stain blooming rapidly on her shirt. Silence. A profound, ringing silence descended, broken only by Seraphina's own ragged, hyperventilating breaths. The gun slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering onto the floorboards. She stared at Eleanor, her friend, lying in a widening pool of crimson, motionless. Asterisk, what have I done? Asterisk. The thought was a scream, a silent, guttural scream inside her head. The shock was immediate, paralyzing. But then, the cold, calculating survival instinct, dormant for only a few seconds, kicked in. Asterisk, no. This didn't happen. It can't have happened. I have to fix it. Asterisk. Her eyes darted around the room, then landed on Eleanor's purse, lying innocently by the door. Her phone? Asterisk. The phone. Asterisk. A lifeline. A tool for deception. She grabbed it, her hands still shaking, and forced herself to unlock it. She had to make it look like Eleanor had simply left, gone on a trip, vanished. She started typing, her fingers stiff, her mind racing, frantically trying to mimic Eleanor's casual tone, her unique turns of phrase. A message to Vivian, canceling plans. Another to Eleanor's lawyer, saying she needed a few days. A final, heartbreaking text to Leo's sitter, full of fake affection. Asterisk. Mommy will be back soon, my love. Just a little trip. Asterisk. Each word was a nail in her own coffin, a lie etching itself deeper into her soul, sealing her fate in the cold, silent depths of the old mill house. The silence was the loudest thing in Vivian Holloway's apartment. It pressed in on her, heavy and suffocating, amplified by the frantic, unanswered calls to Eleanor's phone. 3 days. 3 days since Eleanor had last messaged. A terse, almost flippant text saying she was taking a break after meeting Serafina, that she'd be in touch. It wasn't Eleanor. Not the Eleanor who meticulously planned every minute of her day, who checked in constantly, whose entire world revolved around her son, Leo. Vivian paced the polished floor of her living room, a knot of icy dread tightening in her stomach. As a doctor, she was accustomed to crisis, to analytical thought under pressure. But this was different. This was personal. This was Eleanor. Eleanor, who had finally found happiness with her, who had fought tooth and nail for Leo, who would never, asterisk ever, times simply vanish. When the fourth day dawned with no word, no sign, Vivian drove to the local police precinct, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. The fluorescent lights hummed with a sterile indifference that grated on her raw nerves. A young officer, bored and weary, directed her to a waiting area that smelled faintly of stale coffee and desperation. 2 agonizing hours later, Detective Mark Reynolds finally called her name. Reynolds was a man in his late 40s, with the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much, and a neatly trimmed beard that couldn't quite hide the weariness etched around his mouth. He was professional, even polite, but Vivian sensed an immediate, almost ingrained skepticism. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady, as Vivian recounted Eleanor's disappearance, the unusual messages, the missed custody hearing. "Dr. Holloway," he began, his voice a low rumble, "I understand your concern, truly. But in cases involving contentious divorces, especially those with custody disputes, it's not uncommon for one party to, well, to remove themselves from the situation, temporarily, or to make it appear that way." He picked up Eleanor's file, flipping through the sparse pages of her initial missing person report. Her ex-husband, Mr. Davies, has a rather litigious history, and the custody battle itself has been quite bitter, from what I gather. Vivian felt a surge of indignation, hot and sharp. "With all due respect, detective, you don't know Eleanor. She is a former police officer. She understands consequences. More importantly, she is Leo's mother. Her son is her entire world. She would never, asterisk, ever, times abandon him, especially not before a crucial custody hearing that she was so desperate to win. She was terrified of losing him. Detective, not running from him." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, betraying the stoic facade she tried to maintain. "The messages, they just don't sound like her. She usually ends her texts with XOXO to me, or uses specific emojis. These were impersonal, cold. And to her lawyer, she used a phrase she would never use, something about needing space. Eleanor doesn't need space when it comes to Leo." Reynolds raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "And these messages, they continued for a day or so after you last spoke to her?" "Yes," Vivian confirmed, her throat tight. "But they stopped abruptly. No last message, nothing. Just silence. Like her phone died. Or was turned off." "Right." Reynolds scribbled something on his pad. "We'll look into the phone records, of course. Check the last known pings. But without any signs of foul play, Dr. Holloway, these cases often resolve themselves with the person reappearing. It's frustrating, I know." He stood, signaling the end of their conversation, his skepticism still palpable, a heavy curtain between them. As Vivian walked out of the precinct, the city lights blurring through her tear-filled eyes, she clutched the compass pendant Eleanor had given her. Asterisk. Eleanor is not gone. She would never leave us. Asterisk. The conviction burned fierce and bright within her, a tiny flame against the encroaching darkness. She would not rest until she found her. Detective Reynolds, despite his initial professional reserve, found himself unable to shake off Dr. Holloway's fervent conviction. Her quiet intensity, her unwavering belief in Eleanor Vance's character, resonated. He prided himself on trusting his gut, and something about Vivian Holloway's anguish felt profoundly real. He assigned his junior partner, Detective Miller, to start digging into Eleanor's phone records and bank statements. A day later, Miller walked into Reynolds' office, a grim expression on his face. "Sir, we've got something. Not sure what it means, but it's definitely not adding up." He placed a printout of Eleanor's bank statement on Reynolds' desk. "This $40,000 settlement payment? It was deposited a few months ago, and it's completely gone. Cleared out almost immediately after it was received." Reynolds leaned forward, his tired eyes narrowing. "Gone? To where?" "A series of small, untraceable cash withdrawals, mostly, over the course of a week, and one larger transfer to an account we're still trying to identify, but it appears to be a business account for a local boutique." Miller pointed to an entry. "Serafina's Chic Corner, registered to a Serafina Cross." The name clicked. Serafina Cross, Reynolds mused, reaching for Eleanor's file. Dr. Holloway mentioned a close friend Eleanor entrusted money to keep it out of the custody dispute. This must be her. He made a note. "And the texts? Anything unusual?" Miller nodded. "We've got the full data dump. The messages sent from Eleanor's phone after she supposedly left are odd. Grammatical errors she doesn't usually make. A change in tone. And the last few texts, sent to Dr. Holloway and the lawyer, came from a cell tower deep in the woods, near a place called the Old Mill House. After that, nothing. Phone appears to have been powered down or destroyed." "The Old Mill House?" Reynolds repeated, a cold prickle of unease snaking up his spine. "Isn't that where Serafina Cross lives?" He looked up, meeting Miller's gaze. "Get Serafina Cross down here for a statement. And don't tell her why, just that we're following up on Eleanor Vance's whereabouts." Serafina Cross arrived at the precinct looking impeccably put together, though a careful observer would notice the faint shadows under her eyes and the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands. She wore a stylish, if slightly oversized, designer coat that seemed to swallow her slender frame. She smiled politely, but her eyes were wary. "Detective Reynolds," she said, her voice smooth, almost practiced. "I'm happy to help in any way I can. Eleanor is a dear friend. I'm just devastated by her disappearance." Reynolds offered her a seat. "Thank you for coming in, Miss Cross. We understand you were the last person to see Eleanor before she left." Serafina nodded. "That's right. She came to my family's cabin, the Old Mill House, that Tuesday evening. She was supposed to collect the money I was holding for her, the $40,000 from her settlement. She was so excited about the custody hearing." Her eyes darted around the interrogation room, but she quickly refocused on Reynolds. "And did she collect the money?" Reynolds asked, his voice even, betraying nothing. A beat of hesitation. Serafina's smile faltered. "Well, yes, she did. We sorted out the paperwork, and she took it. In cash, actually. She said she preferred to have it on hand for the lawyer, just in case." "In cash?" Reynolds leaned forward slightly. $40,000 in cash? That's quite a sum to be carrying around." "Yes, well, Eleanor can be impulsive," Serafina said, trying to regain her composure. "She was under a lot of stress. Anyway, she left around 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock. Said she was going to drive south to see some distant relatives. Needed to clear her head before court, you know. I tried to convince her to stay, but she was set on it." "Drive south?" Reynolds questioned. But her messages to Dr. Holloway and her lawyer indicated she was just taking a few days off, not leaving the area entirely, and her phone records show the last ping from the Old Mill House before going dark. She wouldn't have made it far by 10 o'clock. Serafina's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, well, I don't know about that. She just said she was going south. Maybe she meant for a short trip. Then she'd come back. Who knows what's on Eleanor's mind when she's stressed." She shrugged, attempting a casual demeanor that felt increasingly forced. The cracks were starting to show. Her story was already unraveling. The financial investigation into Serafina Cross began in earnest. Reynolds put his best forensic accountant on it, and within days, the picture was stark and damning. Serafina's boutique, Serafina's chic corner, was not the thriving business it appeared to be. It was a house of cards, teetering on the brink of collapse. There were mounting debts, unpaid invoices, and a significant amount of money that had been systematically siphoned from customer deposits and business accounts. The timing of Eleanor's $40,000 transfer aligned perfectly with a sudden but temporary surge in Serafina's solvency, followed by another rapid decline. The $40,000 wasn't borrowed, it was consumed, swallowed whole by Serafina's financial black hole. Motive, Reynolds declared, tapping the financial report. Strong as it gets. She needed that money desperately, and Eleanor wanted it back. Simultaneously, the digital forensics team made a crucial breakthrough. Not only did Serafina's phone ping from the old mill house during the critical period of Eleanor's disappearance, but GPS data showed her vehicle making multiple, unusual trips between the cabin and a nearby highway access point in the dead of night, for several hours after Eleanor was last seen. Not consistent with someone merely saying goodbye to a friend. She was moving something, Detective Miller theorized. Or disposing of something. Then came the surveillance footage. A small, independently owned hardware store, just a few miles from the old mill house, had a surprisingly clear exterior camera. The timestamp matched the early hours of the morning after Eleanor vanished. The footage showed Serafina Cross, her hair pulled back under a baseball cap, her face pale and drawn, meticulously loading several large bags of cement, sacks of sand, gravel, and bags of potting soil into the back of her pickup truck. The sheer volume of material suggested a significant construction project, far more than what a casual gardener or homeowner would typically buy at once. She paid in cash, her movements stiff and hurried. Bingo, Reynolds murmured, watching the footage again, a chill running down his spine. Concrete, cement, potting soil, the same materials she'd need to conceal something. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who lived in a ramshackle farmhouse a few miles down the road from the old mill house. He was known for his love of local gossip and his meticulous observation of anything that disturbed the quiet rhythm of his rural life. Detective Miller had been canvassing the area, showing Eleanor's picture, when he knocked on Mr. Henderson's door. The old man, with his wispy white hair and keen, inquisitive eyes, invited him in for a cup of lukewarm coffee. Eleanor Vance, you say? Mr. Henderson mused, looking at the photo. Pretty lady. Didn't know her much, but I've seen her car out at the Cross place a few times. And Serafina, poor girl, always had her head in the clouds. Had her shop in town, didn't she? Well, I hope she's all right. Miller paused. Have you seen Serafina lately, Mr. Henderson? Or heard anything unusual from the old mill house? Mr. Henderson's eyes narrowed, a thoughtful expression on his face. Well, now that you mention it, that Tuesday night, I believe it was, my old dog Buster, he was barking something fierce, and I distinctly heard Serafina's pickup truck, not once, mind you, but several times, back and forth down that long, winding driveway, and then I heard a strange noise, like a motor running, for a long time. Sounded like one of those old cement mixers. My grandpappy used to have one. Sounded just like that. He paused, taking a slow sip of his coffee. And, just a week or two before that, Serafina stopped by. Brought me some of her wife's famous apple pie. She was asking me, all casual-like, about concrete. Asked me how long it took to set up, how strong it was. Said she was thinking of fixing up the old well. Thought it was a bit strange at the time, but didn't think nothing more of it. Miller's heart pounded. He thanked Mr. Henderson profusely, nearly spilling his coffee, and immediately called Reynolds. The pieces of the puzzle were no longer scattered. They were interlocking, forming a chilling, undeniable image. Armed with the overwhelming evidence, financial records, phone data, surveillance footage, and witness testimony, Detective Reynolds secured a search warrant for the old mill house. The next morning, a convoy of police vehicles and forensic teams descended upon the isolated cabin. The scene was grim, the air heavy with an unspoken understanding of the tragedy that had unfolded there. The K-9 units, trained to detect human remains, quickly honed in on a disturbed section of earth at the far corner of the property, near an old, crumbling stone foundation that had once belonged to an outbuilding. The ground there was strangely level, almost meticulously smoothed over, but the soil was dark, richer than the surrounding forest floor, almost like a carefully cultivated garden bed. The excavation was slow, painstaking work. Each shovel full of earth felt like a violation. After hours of careful digging, the forensic team hit something hard, unyielding, concrete. A thick, gray slab, poured meticulously, obscuring whatever lay beneath. They worked with jackhammers, then chisels, until finally they broke through. What they found beneath the concrete, encased in layers of earth and sediment, brought a collective gasp from the hardened officers. It was a human form, carefully wrapped, its contours tragically clear. The chief medical examiner carefully unwrapped the tattered tarp, revealing the long-lost face of Eleanor Vance. Her eyes were closed, her expression frozen in an agonizing rictus that hinted at the terror of her final moments. But it was a small, delicate glint of metal around her neck that provided the final, heartbreaking confirmation. A silver chain, and on it, a finely carved compass pendant, its needle forever pointing north, a symbol of guidance and hope. It was the necklace Vivian Holloway had given her, a token of their love, a promise of a future that would never be. 41 days. 41 days Eleanor had been missing, and now she had been found, not in some distant retreat, but buried in the cold, unyielding earth of her friend's family property. Serafina Cross was arrested that same afternoon. She offered no resistance, her face utterly devoid of emotion, a blank slate of despair. The subsequent interrogation was long and arduous. For hours, she maintained her fabricated story, clinging to the fragments of lies she had woven. But as Detective Reynolds systematically laid out the evidence, the financial ruin, the inconsistent stories, the phone records, the surveillance footage of her buying the concrete, Mr. Henderson's testimony, and finally, the agonizing discovery of Eleanor's body, her carefully constructed facade crumbled, the dam broke. In a torrent of sobs and choked whispers, Serafina confessed. The desperation, the panic, the accidental shooting, the horrifying decision to bury her friend, the shame, the terror, the betrayal. It all spilled out, a chilling testament to how quickly a life can unravel and how deep the darkness can run. The trial of Serafina Cross became a national spectacle. The story of the beloved mother and former officer, betrayed and murdered by her closest friend over money, captivated the public. Vivian Holloway sat in the front row every day, her hand often resting on a small, engraved locket containing a picture of Eleanor and Leo. Leo, now living with Vivian, was too young to fully grasp the enormity of the tragedy, but the absence of his mother was a gaping wound in his young life. The prosecution presented an airtight case, the evidence overwhelming and undeniable. Serafina Cross was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Justice, in its cold, unyielding form, had been served, but it came at an immeasurable cost. In the quiet aftermath, Vivian and Leo found solace in each other. The house, once filled with Eleanor's vibrant energy, now held the echoes of her memory. Vivian often found herself tracing the lines of the compass pendant she now wore, a mirror of Eleanor's, a constant reminder of the love they shared. She spoke of Eleanor often, ensuring Leo would never forget the strength, kindness, and fierce love of his mother. They visited Eleanor's grave at the old mill house, a simple headstone now placed over the spot where her body was found, a place once marked by a hastily arranged garden bed. The betrayal had ripped their world apart, leaving behind a jagged, irreparable tear. But in the quiet moments of grief and healing, Vivian knew that Eleanor's love, and the pursuit of justice in her name, would guide them forward, forever etched into the landscape of their lives.